All right, welcome. It's the first episode of Did You Hear That? A Hobo Hill podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Karyn. This is Erin, one of the homeowners.
Hello.
Not to make it confusing with Erin, her husband Aaron, and Karyn, so there's that.
I think we call it Karyn and the Erins.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we need to work on that.
She didn't like that.
Yeah. Moving on. No. All right, so we are so excited to be doing this. Erin and I have been talking about this with as quickly as time passes, I want to say, like 2 to 4 years, any time in between that time.
Yes, it's been forever.
Yeah.
Yes.
Basically, since you've got the home, there's been a lot going on and conversations amongst us, and we just thought it would be what a better platform than this to bring it to you all. So, we are going to be discussing today the origin of it all. How did we get here? How did you come about getting the home? All of that good stuff. And there's so much more that we're going to be bringing you as well. It's going to be kind of a mixture of things. We've got some paranormal things lined up, a little bit of true crime. I personally love true crime.
I'm a true crime junkie for sure.
Yeah, yeah, love true crime.
I like to listen to true crime in my headphones at night when I'm walking and I'm imagining myself fighting off a predator. It's probably a sick joke that I do that to myself, but
and it's because of true crime that in my mind I feel like I could get out of every scenario. Yes. I like 5 foot maybe, but I feel like I could. I've put myself in plenty of scenarios. But yeah, so today we are just going to be opening it up, kicking it off with how Hobo even came into your life, how we got here anyway. So I guess we can get into it if you're ready.
I'm sure. I'm ready. It's like going down memory lane. We found Hobo Hill, or I say we, it was me, but it's hard to tell this story at this point in time now because it's kind of one of those situations, woulda, coulda, shoulda. Right. What's the phrase? Like, if you know now what you knew then, or if you knew then what you know now. Yeah. Well, I accidentally, and I use air quotes because I don't think there was any accident to it now that I've found out all this stuff. But in 2017, my husband Aaron, girl Aaron and boy Aaron, we had moved across the state. So we had lived in Kansas City. I had gone to college there. He was a police officer there. And then we just kind of randomly picked up and moved across the state for a fresh start. And we were entrepreneurs. We wanted a new community. We just started fresh. But what happened to us on the east side of the state is just, it didn't feel like a fit. It didn't feel like a long-term fit. We didn't have any sort of like love of the area. And we were kind of struggling financially, actually. So my new life plan, because I come up with a new life plan like once a year. Yeah. But my new life plan was I'm going to go do real estate, and it will be I'm going to flip houses like the HGTV people, and we're going to live in the house, and it'll be a great happy life. And I knew my husband was so excited for it.
For a little bit of background, this is not.
We didn't even barely change light bulbs.
No, and this was like out of the ordinary for you to do.
Oh anyway, yeah,
this is the girl that bought a home on her lunch hour.
Oh yeah, that's true. It wasn't like the first time I had done some crazy stuff. I had done that before, but so I had started looking in mid-Missouri because I knew that the prices were cheaper. I knew the area better. I had tried some real estate in St. Louis, but I was like picking bad areas and I didn't know what I was doing. And so we actually scheduled a visit to come to Jeff City to look at a different house. And because we were going to try to use up the day and really see what was out there, there were like 5 or 6 more houses added to that list, one being Hobo. Yeah. And I remember texting my real estate agent and saying, like, what about this one? Like, this looks really interesting and like really empty and gutted and has quite a lot of work to do. But
why not like,
I don't know. And anyway, so we drove down, we put our list of houses together, and we brought my grandpa. So we'll talk about Grandpa Gary in this podcast because he's always intertwined in our life. He's like the most supportive guy in the whole entire world. But he went with us because his background is real estate, and both he and I think boy Aaron, even though he was like, oh God, I married this flaming psycho. But I mean, even just walking in the back door, it felt like it was supposed to be ours.
Yeah.
And so that's the beginning. And we moved quickly. And what's crazy is that, like I said, we were struggling a little bit financially. We had tried some businesses that weren't working. We were really, like, he had quit the police department. And so as far as like a flimsy time of my life, it was the flimsiest. And it was like we were hanging on by a thread.
Yeah.
We were okay. But we could not get a loan. I had tried to get, I don't know if I've even told you this story, but this is the spooky part of Hobo. I swear it was like calling us.
Yeah.
But I had tried to get a loan previously just to consolidate some debt on a house that I owned outright, and we couldn't even get a loan through Quicken Loans. Like, we got rejected in the last minute.
Yeah.
And when I called a bank here locally, we love them, Mid-America Bank, but I called a lady named Kelly because my real estate agent said call her. They approved us within like a day.
Yeah.
We got this loan. It was like sight unseen, and then off we went. It was and then we closed like 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
It was the craziest thing.
Well, and I remember because we, you know, one of the reasons why you chose Jeff is you were moving a little bit closer to family.
We had support. We knew that if we did a big move like this, we would have support, and we would have people around us like you and like my mom and like my grandpa. Like, we had been lonely for a long time.
Yeah.
And so on top of knowing the area and being able to afford it, it was like coming home.
Right.
And Hobo felt the same way. It was like we had walked into our home.
Yeah. And I remember it was almost down to 2 homes. There was one that was right down the road from us.
Yep.
And this Hobo. So was there anything in particular that kind of tipped the scales for you guys choosing Hobo? Because both of them were kind of a project. Hobo more so than the other one, probably.
Well, the freaky thing about the other one was that you didn't know what was behind the walls.
True.
What we loved about Hobo is that everything was stripped, and we felt like there were no secrets. We were wrong. There were lies. Ta-da! Surprise! Yeah. You know, evil children and old men. You know, but we felt like it was more of an open book, and we could see the vision of it easier, and it just felt like it needed us. I mean, that's literally how we felt. And as far as resale value, as far as size, and the other piece about it was that very quickly Hobo didn't look to us like a real estate investment. It felt like it could be something that was ours, that we could live in. Like, things were, the moment we walked in, we felt like maybe this isn't just some way to save us financially. Maybe it's really, you know, the place.
You were planning on living there, right?
Yeah, we changed our mind very quickly. This is going to be it.
Yeah,
we love
this. We're not going to flip this. This is going to be our home. Yeah, because you came to love it. Is that?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, and again, I swear there are no accidents. Our financial situation changed very quickly. We started a new business at the time, so it was like mass chaos. And not that anybody cares about this portion, but for like 3 months, we lived in your mother-in-law, my mom's camper. In the backyard.
I have as well at one point in my
Lord,
life.
we've all lived in the
camper.
We've all lived in the camper. Yeah, so we lived in the camper, and like, I joke about it, like, I would have to go outside to be on phone calls, and there was always literally a cat on my back. I mean, it was so crazy. But things changed very quickly for us. It was like everything all of a sudden worked out. All at the same time, everything worked out that we had been praying for so long. And so again, instead of just having to barely flip this place, we were able to change our mindset and do more of a beautiful renovation. And so very quickly, we just decided we're going to really, you know, it's not like we spent $1 million on it, but we remodeled the kitchen to make it a dream kitchen. We put in backsplash that, like, I'm still jealous of, because now I had to freaking move and I don't have any backsplash anymore. It's fine. But so we made it beautiful. We made it ours. And I was just reminded again this weekend that it was also a family affair. Like, you guys were at our house. I have pictures and videos of Grandma Pat was there even when she wasn't feeling very good. And it was an entire group of us that really put a labor of love into that place.
Yeah, and I remember that too. Because I was very pregnant at the time. And it was the feel around it at the time was everybody was so excited. It was so
happy.
Cool. Yeah. So the vibe around the whole house from the beginning was really, exciting, and everybody was just happy to chip in and get it going, and you know, see the renovations come to life. So
that's kind of how our family is, and I feel like for me, instinctually, if real estate in some way, shape, or form calls my name, which we've had a couple of other instances where that has happened, it's this need to make an ugly, old, sad place happy and beautiful again.
Yeah.
And that is really what I felt in, like deep down in some weird gut space, that we were supposed to bring this place back to life. Little did we know that it was like, awakening the evil dead or whatever it was.
Exactly.
And then fast forward, and I won't give too many hints, but now we've heard from numerous people that we brought in as quote unquote experts to help us, that the house really was calling to me and that it was luring me. And I still don't think it's a bad thing. I think that we were supposed to be there. I think that it was meant to be. I think it, I still think there's beauty and joy in that in that house, but I don't think that it was an accident that I was drinking coffee and found it on Zillow.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, and we'll touch on that too. I mean, there were things that were, specifically happening to you, that kind of kicked off a lot of this stuff. But before we get there, so you've got the home, you're getting it renovated. Was there anything that happened early on that maybe felt odd, but not like, oh, this place is haunted?
It's one of those. Okay, so for people who don't believe in it, it's like a little checklist of things that you would also make sense of, like the people that constantly debunk. Well, we were debunkers.
Yeah.
So when I tell the story, it's almost embarrassing because people call us idiots, or they call us clueless, or you freaking. I mean, we've been called all the names. But I mean, there were cages in the basement. I mean, I don't know.
A wet spot that won't go away.
There were like these haunted cages in the basement that we laughed about. Erin's joke is like, black guy ain't dying in this episode, and then he's got his crazy white lady wife that's like, gonna go into like the haunted passageways. But so there were these spooky little cages. We had a landscaping crew that found some sort of femur bone in the backyard. But mind you, this is Missouri. There are plenty of cattle. We pretty much immediately had some electrical issues. We would hear banging at night. Now, I'm going too far forward because during construction, we didn't really know any of that. I would say the other thing, again, for non-believers, this is where we also get called names, but our dog, as silly as that sounded, we tried to bring our dog into that house. And when I tell you he was terrified, I thought it was just anxiety because our other dog had died, and so I just really thought he was in the thick of it, but we couldn't get him even in there. He would just shake. He would lay on a rug and then be sleeping and all of a sudden go running across the room like something had touched him. And again, totally clueless, but I bought him bark jackets and I got him anxiety medicine. And yes, the floors were wood and he was like a big old gray pitty. And so he struggled, but I brought him to Lowe's and he was perfectly fine in there,
and the stairs in particular, wasn't that kind of an issue?
Yeah, I think he had joint problems too. I mean, we know that he struggled, but he just was not having it. I mean, the dog hated the house. And the other thing that I would say is, there were padlocks on all the doors, like all on the interior or the exterior. It was on the exterior.
So locking people in the rooms.
So padlocks on the bedroom doors.
No red flags went off then.
Right. and then maybe one room that had some sad kind of a feel to it. It had a lot of paintings on the wall. It had a quote. And it was the Serenity Prayer, which is also Alcoholics Anonymous prayer. And so we thought maybe somebody with some addiction maybe stayed there. But again, like, none of that is a thing. None of that is anything that I would say like, ugh.
And this isn't anything that you had encountered before. So it's not like you all are like ghost hunters or into the paranormal. That was, I mean, as long as I've known you, it wasn't like you were super into the paranormal, like you were seeking this out.
No, I don't even watch scary movies. I watched The Conjuring after being in Hobo. And like,
yikes.
I mean, if you want to know the story of Hobo, go watch The Conjuring, and all it is a little bit more crazy. Like they've taken it a little further, and we never had a true the dog didn't die, and I don't know. But yeah, watch The Conjuring, and then you'll have Hobo story.
Get an idea of what, And just for people that don't know, or if this is the first time you're hearing the story about Hobo, Hobo is located kind of almost on a hill, Hobo Hill, and behind it is one of the busiest highways that goes straight through Jefferson City, Missouri. Close to downtown area. So I thought it was interesting when you mentioned the whole bone and all of that beach. It's not necessary. This isn't out on a farm somewhere. So there were some odd things that kind of came up that.
Well, and we had people that would like stop by. Like we had this random guy that pulled up one day trying to sell us light fixtures out of the back of his Jeep. I mean, it was fine, but very normal. But he said, "Oh man, you guys bought that haunted house. Like we used to call that the haunted house on the hill, the ghetto mansion." Again, woulda, coulda, shoulda. We had a lot of people throughout, the first year, and especially once we started talking about it, that were like, "Oh yeah, I had an experience there." I'm like, would have been nice to know.
And I remember one of our neighbors across the street. I mean, we loved them. Loved an older couple, but same thing. He was like, "Oh yeah, that place has some history." We're like, "What?" Like what? And, and that was right when you guys were doing the renovations, and had a few things happening there. But at this time, whenever you're doing the renovations, you hadn't spoken to anyone that had lived there previously, correct? Like that came later.
No, the only person that we even met that had anything to do with the house was the guy that we bought it from.
Right.
And at closing, so what had happened, he had bought this house, and we've learned now that it was like kind of bought off the court, steps. And he had bought this house, and at closing, his wife, he had worked on it for 2 years and had done most of the work himself. So it was gutted because he had gutted it.
Right.
And he did a great job. We really didn't redesign much at all. But at closing, his wife was pregnant, and she made a comment and said, "Yeah, we're not doing this. I'm not having a baby here." And we interpreted that as, she's pregnant, an old dude is done. Like, I'm done with this project, which is understandable. Right. But we think that there was more said, and even our banker, who we love, had heard something at closing that, again, she didn't think anything of it, but it was odd. It was an odd statement. And so, we just walked in blindly, really excited. And, the other pieces of that place, it's across from a school that actually got, hit by the tornado. Yes. So it's no longer a school. It was kind of on its last leg anyway. But there are mass amounts of stories from that school. I mean, everybody that attended that school has some version of, a spooky, girl ghost, like the Harry Potter ghost. I mean, they all have something. So it would have been nice to know.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the stories that I was actually thinking of the other day for people that are skeptics, I mean, you had tons of contractors in there, and I forget which ones it was. I don't know if it was painters or tile guys, but they were kind of giving you a little bit of hell, like some grief about it, and then what happened? They both went home that night because, and they had the same dream, right?
Yes.
Guys, and they were very much skeptical. They were not believing any of this stuff.
So timeline-wise, we bought it in July. We lived in the camper. It was wonderful until we were like just really too many people in the camper. And so we decided to move in October, and it was a mess to get in there, but we basically would like lock ourselves in one room at a time. My son was a baby, so he was a disaster, but it also allowed us to work on the place at night. I could paint at night. I could stain floors, and we just made it work. I mean, one of the first pictures of Erin and I drinking coffee in our kitchen, he's like sitting next to the island that has a plywood on it. Like we lived our best lives. And so we moved in, and contractors were in and out all day long. And I just worked from home. Anybody that worked with me during that period of time, like you always heard a nail gun in the background or some painting or staining or sanding or whatever. And so we just rolled with it. But immediately, I mean, it was like, it had to have been less than 2 weeks in that things started happening. And again, for a skeptic, none of it connected. The electrical issues. We started having, blinking lights and heaters turning on and ceiling fans turning on and things that we blamed on our electrician, who wasn't actually an electrician. In fact, we found a book that was how to do electrical for dummies or something like that. Wow. Okay. So that was, moot point. You know, old buddy is struggling with the electrical. Let's hope we don't burn the house down.
Yeah.
Then then Raina and Titus, my kids, we were all locked in. We were in Raina's room because we would just like hoard ourselves into one room at a time.
Yeah.
And that deadbolt locked. And I didn't lock it, and Titus was a baby, and Raina swears she didn't, and it just spooked us. Then we started hearing the banging noises at night, because mind you, we hadn't stayed at night until this point. And so the house would just, the way that I would describe it is it would just like wake up. Like the house would just be awake, and it would just start knobbing and just, I don't know.
Had some Bluetooth issues, right?
Yeah,
Miley Cyrus blaring and
right. We had a TV that would turn on, and at the same time, I started getting sick. So I started having like really bad neck problems, which I literally do have neck problems. So whatever, and hip problems and a knee problem. I mean, like whatever, it's fine. But at the time, my neck was giving me major grief. I was sick, and I wouldn't even know how to describe being sick, except for I was like dead. I was exhausted, and I was getting more and more exhausted. And so, like, for example, there was one night that I was in bed, because I was always in bed, which I'm like type A. Yes, I am exhausted, and I've probably burnt out my adrenals, but like I am a mover. But this place just knocked me out, and I was laying in bed one night, and I hear downstairs this TV go booming loud, and Aaron came upstairs a couple of minutes ago, and he was like, the kitchen TV just turned on all by itself, and it turned on and connected to this scary like Halloween show that had at one point in time been on Raina's iPad. And he's like, it was just one thing after the other, after the other, after the other. And then Aaron and Raina came in from a swim lesson, and it was 8:00 at night, and he had groceries in his hand, and she started walking up the stairs, and they both heard something. And he just stopped for a minute, and she goes, Daddy, did you hear that? And he said, what did you hear? She goes, somebody said hi to me. And this was also same point in time. We started having holidays at Hobo. We had Thanksgiving at our house, and my dad was there, and Raina carved her name in our banister, which at the time, again, we were like, what a weird little kid thing to do. She's not really that kid. She must have had like some of our siblings with her. Kids like don't do naughty things by themselves, but as a group, like they can do anything. Sure. Blamed it on that. We confronted her, and she was zero apologetic. Yep, I did it. I took a scraper and scraped my name into this banister. And again, we would almost need to go look at the videos to even be reminded of all the little stuff. But it was just one thing after the other after the other. Knob heaters that would turn on, and it's not like an electrical thing. It would have to be the whole knob would turn, and they were turning on by themselves. So going back to the contractors, the reason that they even talked to us about it was because we started contacting paranormal teams. Like we started kind of asking around. And another thing that spooked us is that we had made a joke posting about how our dog was having raging anxiety and how we needed to get him a bark jacket. And we had like a million people comment and say it's that house. We've known it since the day you moved in. And we had some people say that there was blood in the stairs. And one of my Native American friends said, like, there's been death on those stairs. There's blood all over it. And it's like when you're watching a scary movie, all of a sudden, like, all the noises from 7 miles away are like so loud. That's what happened to us. And I think that was part of also what got the house even more jazzed. I think it ate at us. I think it loved the fact that it scared the shit out of us. I think that it ate it up, and every time it would knock us out, it built a little bit more strength. Like I think when we moved in it was like in some sort of hibernation, and we livened it up.
It did seem like that. Like there was little things happening, like like you said, the TV, or I remember a story about hearing like a loud crash, and it was a pizza box, but it would have almost had to have been thrown down on something to make that a noise. I remember Boyer saying like he tried to recreate the noise because it was just too weird. But then it started to build. And it started getting scary. And I feel like it was specifically for you and Raina, right? That things were kind of, honing in on you guys specifically. What was the story of of Raina, who had never slept walk before in her life, started to have some issues there.
Well, we had started to struggle with Raina at night. She was sleepwalking. She was having little night terrors. I had night terrors as a kid. Erin sleptwalked. So again, separate from all the other things, it was very much explainable. But it was like building, and we had started talking about it, and people were adding fuel to the fire. And I think that it was getting so heightened, and my fear was so big, and I just was scared for my kids, and I didn't understand it. It's like when you don't, I'm more fearful of something that is out of my control, and I felt like it was very out of my control. Like, what the heck am I supposed to do? So one day, all this stuff had been happening, and I went to a yoga class, which there's, we could talk about the yoga studio in that building, and, we're in that building now.
Yes.
That's crazy. But this yoga teacher had said, like, you are powerful, and you can get rid of this, and you need to remember you are the owner of that house. Like, you are the alpha. She like gave me this feather and gave me all this like confidence. And so I went home like beating my chest, telling bitches to back off.
Right.
You know what I mean? I spent the whole day like, what's up?
I am powerful.
I am powerful. And so that night I was like feeling pretty jazzed, but again, the house was okay during the day. It woke up at night. So I was giving Raina a bath, and she's sitting in the bathtub, and this is the famous bathtub story that's on all the shows. But she said, out of the blue, "Mommy, what would happen if I threw my baby brother out the window?" Very nonchalant, with like a little shit-eating grin on her face. And I was like, what? And I just knew, again, outside of that house, maybe I wouldn't have thought anything of it. Like, they were watching that baby, Boss Baby at the time, and like they rifle that baby out the window. Like, I just would have not probably thought anything of it. But in this house, I was like, Raina, first of all, that your baby brother would die. He would not. This house is huge. It's way high up, and then I'm like threatening her. You would go to jail for forever. Like, you would never. I would lock you away. And then I just said, we just don't joke about that, baby. I don't know where that came from. Like, that's not stuff that we talk about in this family, because we would never hurt each other. And meanwhile, I'm like texting my friend, oh my God, something is terribly wrong. And 5 minutes later, as we're getting done with the bath, she starts crying and says, Mommy, I did not say that. I did not mean to say that about my baby brother. I didn't want to, but my brain told me to. And again, you've got all the missing pieces. And I didn't even mention the smells. I didn't even mention the cold spot. Like, it was just all the missing pieces together. That was like some weird final straw. And I felt like the house was saying, you're not strong. You're weak. I win. You lose. And I like wigged out. So again, going back to the contractors, that was the night that I called. When I say I was texting people's landlines. Okay. I looked up priests. I looked up pastors. I looked up paranormal teams. I looked up investigators. I looked up psychics, and I texted them all the same, like 911 emergency message. And the only person that got back to me was this little paranormal investigator team. They were a sweet little couple, and we need to get in contact with them again. But out of Columbia, I texted her landline. She called me. I cried my way through this explanation, and they scheduled a time to come out. And so they came out to our house to interview us, which then caused our contractors to notice, this whole process happening. And so Erin had to explain to like tile guys and electricians and plumbers, like, oh, by the way, we think this house is haunted, and we're like talking to these old people about it. And so they laughed at us. Our contractors we were probably the laughing stock of the whole, construction community. Sure. And then hindsight 2020, we find out that they got touched, they got messed with, they started getting, things would touch their back. Our guy that did our bathroom tile, he said something would touch his back and there would be nothing behind him. Was it the plumber, or was it who? You can talk. Tile. No, not the one that had the dream about the brother.
The one that had the dream about the brother?
No, the tile guy.
It was, he did the tile for...
the other bathroom. So there was another group that did the other bathroom, and he is one that said, I was like totally laughing at you guys. And then I had this dream. And anyways, so not just us,
Yes.
But lots of people that went in the house were like, there's something wrong
and
here.
full on skeptics. I mean, these are blue collar guys, big guys. I mean, they have no reason to get into any of this stuff. But you know, I mean, there were believers made in this house for sure. So many things going on, and so all these things started happening. Some, you know, Raina's now sleepwalking, and I'll never forget Boy Erin talking about how it was like a you know, she's like shuffling down the hallway.
She could be a little actress in a horror movie in a hot second. You don't need a clown or a little robot. Like all you need is Raina doing what she did at our house, because she would walk. His description of it is that she was in her bedroom like crying, like facing the window, and he's like, Raina, you know, what is wrong? And she turned around with like a Cheshire cat grin. And my cop Marine jujitsu husband was like scared absolutely shitless and said, hey, what's your name? Like, you know, trying to, I'm like, oh, what if she would have said Jerry? I don't know. I mean, I'm going to leave her in there. So it just continued building. But the other crazy part that I think it did on purpose is it would go into like hibernation mode. So we fast forward, we had a great Christmas. We hosted Christmas. We had freaking Santa Claus come. Remember the Santa?
Remember that?
We had so much fun over the holidays, and then January hit and it like livened back up again. And I swear that house would go into hiding so that I would feel okay. And then be reminded that like, oh, by the way, it's not okay. Like we would get comfortable. And so there was this weekend where, I had a friend visit from Kansas City, and she like did a tour, and she's very sensitive and felt all kinds of stuff and but little did she know, and I hadn't told anybody about this. I had a night on, it was either a Friday or Saturday night, where something laid on top of me.
Yes, I remember
and
that.
It was like this black blob, and they call it sleep paralysis, but I couldn't move, I couldn't scream, I couldn't get Erin. And then it was gone in 10 minutes and I was okay. But it was right in my face, it was right on my body.
Terrifying.
And I hadn't told anybody, because again, like part of what this house did to me was make me think that I was nuts. And I am a little bit. So like, bringing out all my daddy issues. But so I hadn't told her about that. The friend came in, she went through the process, and every spot that she landed that she said, this is funky, I already knew. I already knew that the landing on the stairs was terrible. I already knew that our master bedroom, I already knew that, she knew all the things that I hadn't ever said out loud. And so then that night was the big night of Raina sleepwalking and laughing and doing all the crazy things. And so that Monday I reached out to that friend and said, all right, we're going to need some help. Like we cannot do this on our own. And we found a lady, actually she helped us find a lady out of Tonganoxie, Kansas, who does cleansing. Her background is the Catholic faith, which made a lot of sense to us, because again, throughout all this time period, we had contacted, pastors who we love, who told me basically I was crazy and that I was lacking faith. But the Catholic priests really seemed to, it's like they wouldn't say it out loud per se, but they did not snub me, and they did not tell me I was an idiot, and they just said, come get holy water, and if you can't fix this, we'll call the archdiocese and come bless the house. Which I didn't even realize was a real thing.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
I literally thought that was all in movies, and here I was like, okay, wow, maybe they believe me, or maybe they feel sad for the crazy lady in Jeff City. I don't know.
I remember that time. My husband and I are Catholic, and we had reached out to our priest during that time too, to see,
he gave us a plethora. He said, come anytime, take as much as you want. Erin would come home and like the walls and the stairs would be wet. And he's like, did we have a problem? I had it in a spray bottle.
Well, that's something to know. I mean, you guys didn't want to leave this house. I mean, you did everything you could to stay there. Because, I mean, and for those that haven't seen it, it's a gorgeous home. You guys did an amazing job with the renovations. But, so you had someone come in to do the cleansing again, because it's not like, I mean, you guys had just moved. It's not like you're trying to move again.
Oh no, Erin had said, you're going to bury me in this house, which also is spooky now. So look back, like with the other bodies that are in the basement and then the backyard. So we had a lady come, and she cleansed the house, and she cleansed us, and it was a terrifying experience. And she brought frankincense and myrrh, which if you go to the Catholic Church and they have the gongs and it smells like incense. That is to clear out energy. So we did all of that. She told us some really scary stuff. She said that there's mass violence that has happened in this basement. We've cleared out a lot of it. There were a lot of people trapped, and there's lots of energy, but there are a few specific things that we're not going to be able to get rid of. And she would even be like, he's right over there. He's very angry, like, ugh. Yeah. And she told us that we needed to work on this place for 6 months or more, and she wouldn't let me do it. She gave us a whole list of things to do, but Erin was basically tasked to, take that frankincense, take the myrrh, there's another one called dragon's blood, and you had to put it on a piece of charcoal and let it smoke.
Right.
And then you went and cleanse the energy every day. He would do that, and this is like a 5,000 square foot house. It's huge, and he would have to go from the basement to the attic. I was not allowed to do it, and so we tried.
Yeah.
And there were some things. Even like the week she was going to come, she had told us to put on cross necklaces because it was a really bad week, and she had said, whatever this is knows we're coming, and it's not pleased, and we were going to try to sneak our way there, but it knows. And so she had us wear these cross necklaces. Well, I of course lost mine randomly, searched for it for an entire day.
Yeah.
And then guess who found it on our wooden stairs? Raina. She got home from school and immediately found it.
On the stairs too, where there was a lot of activity, which is
always activity on the stairs, always craziness on the stairs. So long story not short at all, we worked on that place for months, and we felt like we had more tools, and we felt like, we had some major PTSD and trauma, but we were giving it our very best shot. We had Jesus in every room.
Yep.
We played Christian music constantly. We had our holy water everywhere. We had crosses everywhere. We had frankincense all over the place. I mean, we wore our cross necklaces. We prayed. Everybody's always like, well, I mean, in Jesus' name. And I'm like, I asked for Jesus' help a lot.
Yeah.
And he was on a smoke break. I mean, I don't know.
Jesus had other issues going on.
He had other stuff. It wasn't his top priority because I couldn't. I don't know. My faith wasn't strong enough. I don't know what happened, but So we got to that spring, and again, it would go up and down. Like we would have a couple weeks of sanity, and then we would have insanity, and it was so chaotic, and I was so sick, and I was so exhausted. Meanwhile, I'm trying to work a business, and Erin's building a business, and we've got babies going to school, and it was just chaos. And then one night it was enough. Yeah. And we had that's where the Bluetooth radio comes in. We had this Bluetooth that was in the attic, that's in this building. And at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, off she went talking to us and playing music. And she wasn't plugged in and she wasn't on.
But that's the thing. She wasn't even plugged in.
No, it wasn't even on. Like the thing was off. And, my cop husband thought it was we were getting robbed. He thought there was somebody in the house. So he goes running around in his underwear, gonna go attack them. And then we figured out it was in the attic. And that night, Raina was up like 10 times, sleepwalking. And she had started to go down the stairs. She had started to scare us in that she was gonna fall off that balcony or fall down those stairs. And, what was even spookier is the moment we said that out loud, that was our fear. The next night she was on the landing. The next night she had walked down, and it was just getting, they say that entities can't physically harm you, but I think they can. I think they can move you, and we were done. So we woke up the next day, we were in like a coma, drinking coffee, and Erin said, enough is enough. I got to get out of here. And I was like, well, maybe we build. I mean, he's like, that'll take way too long. Let's go.
Yeah. Were you kind of waiting on that? Because he was the one
I was like, waiting.
Look, we're not leaving this place. I'm not moving again. So were you more reluctant to bring up to him? Like,
oh Lord. I thought
to leave.
I thought if I said we need to move, he was going to divorce me.
Right.
Like I really was like, ooh. So I was just waiting on it to be his idea, basically.
Yeah. So how quick did you hop on Zillow that day?
Oh no, we looked at houses that day and the next day, and we put an offer on one on Wednesday. The conversation was on Monday, the offer was made on Wednesday, and we live in that house currently.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is that the moment we said we're out, we're moving, offer accepted, never had a problem.
Oh.
It was the best month ever.
Wow. So from move-in date in October to closing date on the new house, was it even a year that you were there?
Oh, no. We moved out in May.
Yeah, that's right.
So it was like 7 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, again, I just think that house wanted us out. I think that house is, fast forward and now it's this Airbnb. And we get some grief about that. Like, how can you put people in there? I'm like, okay, well, it's better than selling it.
Yes, and people love it. People
they do
live
love
for this
it.
kind of stuff.
And I think you're fine for a while. I
Yes.
do. I think it eats at you and picks at you, and it's like a cancer where the cells start dividing, and then it just takes over. That's what that house was doing to us. And it had gotten to the point where if Raina stayed the night somewhere else, she was totally fine. If she was at Hobo, she was up the entire night. So for us, we just needed to peace out. And that last month was great. We went to Disney. We did some trips. We packed. We slept great. It was very quiet. We ended up leaving like all of our furniture almost. Like almost all the furniture that's in there is stuff that we literally used. I even left my Christmas tree. I was like spooky.
Yeah.
I
feel like that's a common theme too for people that experience this kind of paranormal thing in their residence. They just want to get out. Yeah. All of their stuff is still there, all of those things. I feel like that's a very common theme when you look into these types of things.
Any of those creepy TikToks where you see like abandoned houses, I'm like, oh yeah. No, they were terrorized by the evil entities
they took
of
their clothes and,
pieced out. Yeah, or the abandoned schools or that neighborhood in Branson that like went there is 100% some activity in that little crazy space. Like stuff like that doesn't happen unless the energy is off. Like that's the superstitious side of me is now like, oh now I see it. So
and so you're in the new home, and did things continue with Raina going, sleepwalking and all
good.
Just ended.
Literally, it just ended, and frankly, we haven't talked about this place much. The only reason we were on the show, the only reason it became a thing was because before we moved, we did a Facebook Live. Erin and I sat in our living room and did this Facebook Live, and a lot of people watched it. And I mean, we even had activity on the live. Like our lights started flashing, like it was crazy. But we moved out and we made it into an Airbnb, and we were just doing our best to kind of get it moving. And the only time we had activity was we had decided, like, how the heck are we going to market this? We don't know what we're doing. We're not Airbnb people. We're not haunted people. We don't know do people even care about this stuff? Yeah. And so we were going to do Facebook Lives telling spooky stories up until Halloween, which I don't know why we thought that was a good idea, but it was fun at the time. Yeah. And the first live went fine. The second live had crazy sound issues. The third one had crazy internet issues, and every time I would talk, it sounded like I was growling. And the fourth one, we went to bed, and the same internet issues, growling, noise issues. The fourth one, we went to bed. Raina had night terrors and sleptwalked the entire night, and we woke up and Titus's light was on, which was another thing that I didn't even mention that constantly happened to him when he was in his crib as a baby. His light would be on, and that happened to us. And so we have just learned that we're careful. We just don't talk about it much. We don't want to be the haunted people necessarily. Like I don't want to be the lady that owns the haunted house. Now I'm down for a true crime podcast, and like I'm down to tell other people's stories, but we've just been real cognizant of that. We ended up being on the Dead Files, which again was so bizarre because I had reached out. Remember the night that I told you I was 911 Mayday calling everyone? Yes. They were on that list. Yep. So I had contacted them a year prior. Yeah. But apparently they weren't filming, and they weren't, I don't know. And so originally we got rejected for the show because we didn't live there anymore. Right. That show is for people who they're rescuing and that live there. And but then they changed their minds. We were the first ones that had ever moved out because of what had happened. And to me it pissed me off because I was like, well, y'all didn't help us. Right. And so we had to move out. Exactly. So we're just trying to do our best here. Yeah, that's a really good episode to check out if you're looking for more stuff and in depth on Hobo. The Dead Files episode is a good one to check out. Yeah, it's very embarrassing, but it's fine. Anytime somebody's like, I watched that episode, I'm like, then you get to see me like staring in Amy's eyes, like so dramatically. You have to like stare into each other's eyes for like 20 seconds, and that's where they get the drama. Like editing, I guess. Oh, yeah. So for sure. Well, I mean, that kind of wraps up the short story of the long story. And I mean, that is kind of how you got here, why we have this podcast, all of the things. So fast forward, and what we've discovered is that people have a lot of stories like this. We are not alone. We've learned that many people have experienced some sort of spooky, icky, paranormal, whatever they want to call it, and maybe they don't vocalize it, and we've given them a voice to vocalize it because we look like big idiots on the TV, and they are, feel a little bit safer. We've learned that there are lots of paranormal teams out there. They're literally like Ghostbusters. They have all the equipment. It's very funny. We've learned that there are lots of haunted places throughout the United States, which I would love to cover and interview.
We'll be diving into those for sure. Yeah, I'm from a town in Illinois that kind of neighbors a town called Alton, Illinois, and it's always in like the top 10, top 20 lists of like most haunted properties in America. So I'm really excited to get into some of those. So you're going to be hearing a lot of paranormal stuff from us, some true crime, and also we want to hear from you. How often do you guys want to hear these podcasts? What do you want us to talk about? We are so open to ideas, and we have some things in mind that we want to do, but we also want to hear from our listeners too. What are you excited to hear about? So again, thanks for joining us on our first episode. We did it. And please share with your friends, and giving us a rating also helps on some of these platforms too, to kind of get it out there. So
yeah, unless you didn't like it, and then we don't want your opinion.
Yeah, we don't care about that. Don't give us a rating. If you loved it,
mind
give us a
business.
rating. If you loved it, give us a rating. All right, that does it.
Woohoo!